Welcome, everybody. Another segment of Collingwood Trade Talk. And funnily enough, it's been less than 24 hours since we've last had conversations about everything and anything Collingwood. And there's a couple things, one particularly late in the day, that has come to light and is going to be worth some discussion in the stream today. So let's not dilly-dally around here. Let's get straight to the point, and we'll address the one that came out earlier today regarding the Dan Houston negotiations, right? So it's come out. We've got some clarity around what Carlton are approaching Gold Coast with to get pick 13, and what Collingwood are approaching Gold Coast with to get pick 13, okay? Along with the fact, guys, that there are reports suggesting that Dan Houston does want to go to Carlton. But when you are under contract till 2027, that effectively doesn't hold much weight in the world of trade negotiations. Port Adelaide are looking to get the best out of this conversation, right? Out of this trade. Just because a player nominates a club doesn't mean they're going to head to that club, especially when you're still within contract, okay? You don't have as much leverage in that conversation anymore. So that's the first thing. What Collingwood have offered, or what we're hearing, is Collingwood are asking for pick 13 and pick 23 in exchange for John Noble and a future first, okay? So I guess there's a couple reasons why we're willing to get rid of that future first next year. We talked about the McGuan bid getting would eat up that first round pick. Guys, I just want to make sure, am I in focus? Bear with me. Just bear with me. Let me make sure I am in focus. Hold on. Click on this little thing. All right. There we go. All right, now we're cooking. All right, so the first round pick next year, if we give that away, that's fine. It gets eaten up by the McGuan bid anyways. I understand that. The other thing we need to factor in is the new rule with the future first, right? So next year, even if we don't have the 2025 first round pick, we still have access with the new rules to 26 and 27. So we still have 2 first round picks at our disposal next year if we give up the first round pick for 2025. We still have 2026 and 2027 with the new rules being implemented next year, right? So we offer John Noble and our future first, hopefully in exchange for pick 23 and pick 13, which would enable us to get Dan Houston, a 2-time All-Australian, arguably probably is the best halfback flanker in the game. And we know how important it is to have solid runners off the halfback line to get your team to the last game in September, right? Carlton have come in offering a future first and a future second rounder. I don't know where that lands Collingwood, but I would imagine because Gold Coast want John Noble in a market where there really isn't anybody else who fits that profile that they're looking for. They're already getting Dan Rioli, but they want a dance partner. They want John Noble, right? But if there's no one else on the market, wouldn't Gold Coast opt for what Collingwood are offering? It sounds like Gold Coast, they're not completely satisfied with the offer that Collingwood are providing, but I think they're just playing a bit hard to get at the moment. And hey, look, at the end of the day, John Noble is also under contract to the end of next year. So if Gold Coast don't want to give up what they want, then I'll hold on to John Noble. That's fine. He can still play for us next year. He's fine. We've got Harry Perriman playing in the midfield. Josh Dacos can solidify himself on half-back line. That's fine. That's worst case scenario. The ball's in our court. We've got the upper hand. Shh. Don't get upset. She's a North supporter. So, yeah, Carlton come in. They've got their tails up. They know Dan Houston wants to go to Carlton, but they're going to have to get some some ducks in a row before they have a decent shot at this. What do we think in the comment section? Let's see. Grigora, Kiprios, how are ya? Theo, and welcome. I hope you're well, mate. I hope you're well. Metro Boy, welcome. McGuinness needs more game time. We'll talk about that later. Let me add that to the topic of the topics in the show. McGuinness. Let's add him there, okay. Brendan, how you doing? Hope you're well. I hope you're well. Tim Membry to the Pies. I think he might go to the Lions, it seems like. He hasn't officially nominated Carlton, but that is the understanding behind closed doors. Stefanos Tikanete. Jimbo, how are ya? They want Noble for nothing. Tell them to fuck off. Well, that's the thing, right? Like, we don't have to give away Noble. Like, worst case scenario, guys, is we don't give up Noble, we keep him. Best case scenario is we get Dan Houston for what it will effectively be pick 13, pick 23, and Joe Richards, right? If that doesn't come to fruition, then hey, we'll still have John Noble. It's not the end of the world. Thoughts on Jack Hayes? We'll get there in just one moment. Let me answer these comments and then we'll get there. Bro, we'll get pick 13. All the stars are aligned. So what's preventing this Houston deal getting done? Why? Well, yeah, that's where I'm a little bit confused, Mick. I just think Gold Coast are playing a bit hard to get. But when they realize that the ball's in our court, I think they will submit eventually. Yeah, there's always room to stick to guns there. Fucking oath. Keep him as well in Houston, not much better. Calimera. Melissa, how are you? Hope you're well. When you say, do you think Houston is going to cost us too much? What do you mean? Do you mean by his existing contract? If that's the case, no. Picks. I mean, how do you put a value on picks for an two-time All-Australian who's the best halfback flanker in the league? Like, if he can get to the club, love that. I would love that. But if he doesn't get to the club, then so be it. We're still somewhat confident. I still think we'll get it over the line. Yeah. How much is his contract? I don't know how much his contract is at Port Adelaide. I don't know how much it is. Maybe we can look into that. Does anybody know how much Dan Houston is allegedly on? Athens. Kylie, how are you? I love Collingwood too. You come to the right place. Okay, moving on. We'll circle back to that soon enough. But we've just heard, guys. I'm not sure if anyone here is aware of it, and a few people in the comment section have already brought it up. But Jack Hayes from St Kilda has completed a medical, according to Mitchell Cleary, at the Collingwood Football Club. So for those of you who don't know who Jack Hayes is, he's a 27-year-old key-sized forward who has been dealt with a bad hand of injuries over the last couple of years. ACL in 2022. 2023 brought him inconsistencies after returning from that, and then nagging knee injuries this year kept him out of the squad, played a couple games, and then a couple games in the VFL. I remember his first game for St Kilda because it was also Nick Dacos's first game in the AFL. It was round 1, 2022, and Jack Hayes kicked 3 goals, had 4 contested marks, and was a mature age recruit, and looked like the next Nick Rewalt. Like, he looked really good. But the issue with a lot of these key size forwards is, can they do it on a consistent basis, right? And unfortunately, Jack Hayes, along with the injuries, it hasn't worked out for him at St Kilda. Now, he's a non-free agent, so he's out of contract at the end of this year, which means we still have to give up a pick for him to ensure that he doesn't go to the national draft, right? So we'd probably have to give up a 48 or 51. We don't have any later picks at the moment. So I think a 48 or 51, or if we can get later picks from other trades before we make that Jackson Hayes trade, we'd have to use a later pick to get him over the line. What can we expect from him? I mean, it's a shame because you've got Nathan Kruger there, who I think is he's younger, firstly, 25 going 26. Jack Hayes is 27 going 28. I really wish we could have stuck to our guns with Kruger. It just really seems like he's on the back burner now. He really well and truly is. Jackson Hayes in 2024, in round 8, he had 17 disposals, 12 contested possessions. He played 25% in the ruck and kicked 2 goals against North Melbourne. So take that with a grain of salt. And then he had a game against Hawthorn where he played 40% time on ground. So I imagine he got injured and then came off. But he's played ruck forward, right? He's played ruck forward and would be probably the Mason Cox equivalent replacement when his time comes. But could also be that third key tall forward that we're still chasing. We've talked about Reece McInnes not being able to clutch down that role. We've talked about Ash Johnson. We've talked about Nathan Kruger. This is just another player to have a crack at that position. Look, what do you have against Collingwood in the first round in 2022? He had 5 coaches' votes, 18 disposals, 11 contested possessions, 4 contested marks, and 3 goals straight, along with 8 score involvements. It's a small sample size. What can I say? So you just hope. I think what it is more than anything, guys, is he showed a glimmer of potential, but injuries have hampered his run. And similar to Kruger, injuries have riddled his rhythm at Collingwood. Sometimes you just need a fresh start. Sometimes you actually just need a fresh start, and that changes everything. It's something in the fabric of the makeup of your mind. A fresh start changes everything. It doesn't make much sense, but it feels like that's what needs to happen for Kruger. It feels like this is what probably needs to happen for someone like Jack Hayes. I was reading up on some Reddit forums, and the narrative amongst St Kilda fans is it's such a shame. He's had so much potential, but he's got injuries. It's getting in the way of his consistency. We can't keep him on the list if he's not playing AFL, if he can't stay healthy. It's the same conversations here at the Collingwood Football Club between all of us here. Same thing we say about Kruger. If he can't play, then why is he on our list? He's injured. We can't keep someone on the list if he's always injured. So I think someone like Jack Hayes, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a straight swap at Jack Hayes for a Kruger and just let them swap positions and see how it goes. I don't know. That would be interesting. AFL clubs, they don't do player swaps very often. It's always a player for picks, usually. Usually it's player for picks, or picks and a player for one player, for example. So it's an interesting one. It is an interesting one. But guys, we'll probably be largely upset if we don't bring in a key forward in the trade period, right? This is not going to hurt, I guess. This isn't going to hurt us accessing the draft. I'm hoping, I'm not sure where it'll come from. I'm hoping somewhere within all these trades that are brewing, we can maintain a second round pick so that we can access a key sized forward in the draft. We've talked about Jobe Shanahan, Jonty Fall, Whitlock Twins, Thomas Sims. Those are the players we might be lucky enough to grace in the draft if we do somehow acquire a second round pick. No point trying to hypothesize how the fuck we get that. We'll let the list management do their thing. They clearly know much better than what we do as a collective. So we'll let them work their magic. And as far as outside of Jack Hayes, who is there? Who is there, guys, on the market in the trade window? Tom Lynch, Jack Hayes, Tim Membry, haven't heard much from him. Ollie Lord, haven't heard much from him. So clearly there's these players that we've mentioned. There's no ongoing negotiations, it seems. All right, let's catch up to the comments. Let's catch up. Oh, I think I see Pommy in the chat. Our end-to-end transition that won us the flag in 2023 was absent this year. Yes. So I mentioned this, Mark, all year long, right? Collingwood were top 4 in 2022 and 2023 for defensive half ball movement. In 2024, we were in the bottom 4, along with North Melbourne, West Coast, Richmond. You can't win with that scoring profile. You cannot. We improved our forward half scoring. We're a top 4 forward half team now, which is great, but we still need to be better from our back half. And that's why Houston would be a perfect fit to that, as well as Perryman. We've seen, if you guys have seen my analysis videos on Perryman, very good link up in building up sequences through from back half to forward half. He's a good link up chain and has good vision. Yeah. And he's not afraid to take on difficult kicks. Do you think the Pies make their offer to Gold Coast public hurt the negotiations? No, I don't think so. Yeah, let's hope Jackson Hayes can be another Darcy Cameron. Why not? Why not? Rick, Jack Hayes will be an awesome money ball pickup. Big, strong, aggressive forward ruck. He'll play more consistently in our system. Love that. Would you go after Kennedy if we don't get Houston? I'm not desperate for Kennedy. I'm not desperate for him, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure where I sit with that one. I'm yes and no on Kennedy. I'm yes if I look into my fucking, what do you call it, the genie globe or whatever you want to call it, when I rub the orb and I see that Tom Mitchell is injured again next year, I go, Matt Kennedy's good. But if I look into the future and I see Mitchell is 2023 Mitchell, I go, maybe not. Tex. Kylie, but my name is Tex. Okay. It wouldn't be our best 23. Any news? That is in the works, but it will probably come to light later in the year. I think we are fine with Checkers and McStay. Don't forget they have not really played much footy together. Yeah. How tall is Hayes? Let me find out for you, Mikali. Jack Hayes. Height. He's 194, so he's huge. He's huge. What's that, 6'6" or something? 6'5"? 6 foot 4.5. So he's an undersized ruck, but nicely primed for the key tall forward stocks, especially as a third key tall forward. That'd be nice. Pommy, there you go. He's already answered it for you. Good backup. The giraffe specialist. I really like Hayes. Guy came out of the blocks like prime. Yeah, he was huge. Pommy actually mentioned Hayes like 3-4 weeks ago on one of these streams. He said, what do you think about Jack Hayes? And I go, mate, I don't know where you pulled that one out of, but he was out of contract this year. So anyone who's out of contract is worth conversations. And anyone who's out of contract, even at the end of next year, is worth conversations. Keep your hands off Pommy. Reminds me of Ruffhead. You guys have that knack of getting unloved talent into a position. We talked about yesterday as well, Pommy. Tomlinson would be effectively that Ruffhead replacement. But you guys, don't forget, leave some love for Lyndon Dunn, yeah? Because he's similar to Ruffhead. He was a loved figure at the club, served us really well. And unfortunately, when he did his ACL, that was the end of things for Dunny. He did his ACL twice and still managed to come back and play some footy. So leave some love for Lyndon Dunn, guys. Come on. Died from Crunch Fitness. There you go. He suits Collingwood better We have more halfbacks than halfback FC. Pommy, do you actually have any good halfbacks? Like, you got Sard. Doherty would be good, but he plays wing / midfield now. That, like, if you're talking about Doherty, I can understand that. Jordan Boyd, I don't know. I don't think you rate Jordan Boyd from memory. Lachlan Cowan, he's not necessarily a halfback flanker, is he? Am I missing anyone else? Dan Houston and either Ollie Lord or Hayes would be the dream scenario. So Houston prefers Carlton. If so, why? Okay, so Mark, just because, so the fact that Dan Houston is still under contract with Port Adelaide till the end of 2027 means just because he wants to go to a club, Port Adelaide will not submit to that, because if he's under contract, they want the best deal for Houston. And two-time All-Australian player, the best halfback flanker in the game, just because he wants to go to Carlton because that's where he's nominated, it doesn't mean enough for Port Adelaide. It doesn't mean enough for them to do a good deed. If Houston was out of contract, then maybe Port Adelaide would honour that. But that's the reasoning there. Hopefully that makes sense. So we will watch the video Pommy made today on the chase between the Pies and the Blues as well on Dan Houston. I got his consent. Yeah. I'm not doing this against his will. I'm a fair man. Why do we need a key forward so bad? We have McStay. I think it's more or less just having backup and having a dynamic forward line, because when we don't have a Darcy Cameron or a Mason Cox or a Myercheck or a McStay, one of them out, it throws us off a little bit. We do have enough coverage with our smaller forwards, but our key forwards not so much, especially if you can't get Kruger on the pitch. Ash Johnson can't string together 3-4 goals in the VFL. It'd be nice to have a little bit more coverage there. Saints will go for McInnes if there was a swap. That's an interesting one. I just don't know if clubs love player swaps. I was speaking to Pommy about it last week. Why don't we do more player swaps? I don't know. Yeah. Pommy, I've got water here, coffee, soda water, I've got 2 mandarins. I had coconut water somewhere before. It's all happening, brother. It's all happening. I'd rather get a key back out of the draft. Okay. So next, fair enough. Are we looking at Luke Quaynor? I think Luke Quaynor, there's not a lot of conversations around what's gone on with you. He played a couple games for us in the VFL. We might take him with a late pick. Once again, we're probably going to have to get a 4th round pick or something sorry, let me just check something. But the point I'm saying is we don't have many later picks. We got our last pick is pick 51. So if we want to get a Luke Quaynor in the national draft, it will be a very late pick. We don't have a very late pick is the point I'm making. I just want to see what that might take. But he's probably not somebody who's going to be playing AFL footy in the first 2-3 years at least. If he does come to Collingwood, he's probably, if he does get drafted and he does go to Collingwood, I say this as respectfully as possible, but he's coming off the basis that his last name starts with Q and ends with Quaynor. Yeah, that's what I've gathered when I've watched Luke Quaynor so far. Has anybody else watched a bit of Luke Quaynor? What do you think? So let's go Google Zero Hanger draft order. Have a look. pick. Yeah, so round 4, club picks, Collingwood. Our last pick is pick 55, which falls into the 3rd round. I don't know if it's even worth using pick 55 on him. I'd use something for round 4. So maybe a pick swap or something. I don't know the logistics behind it, but I'd like to get into the 4th round if we're going to get someone like Luke Quaynor to the club. I wouldn't be bending over backwards for him, is what I'm saying. Yeah, so Houston has previous connections, working relationships with Michael Voss when he was at Port, and then also is good mates with Jack Silvani. That counts for anything. He has to come to the Pies. He's a great ball user. Noble, maybe. If we get the deal over the line, if Gold Coast accept the deal, he'll be gone. But worst case scenario, he stays at the club. I wouldn't go for Caleb Daniels, personally. He's too much of a defensive liability. He's too small. Depth plus McStay, 30 injury prone. We could use at least 2 key forwards. That's what I'm saying. More coverage, the better, right? Pomstradamus would roll better off the tongue, mate. Pomstradamus. Lyndon Dunn was a legend. Newman, sorry, I forgot about Newman. My apologies, mate. Yeah, Newman's a great halfback flanker. Sim Bad Boy, your videos are much better. You're now dealing with facts rather than useless journo speculation. It's not easy, mate. It's not easy. I'm going to... Yes, Manny, you're in Adelaide, so you can go find out what the fuck's going on. Go get us the answers. We will get Luke Quaynor very cheap, like a 3rd rounder. Yeah, I don't know if he's worth a 3rd rounder. I really don't. Watched Luke Quaynor live at Casey and wasn't able to keep up with it at all. There you go. Luke is slow, not much chop. Interesting. Yeah, so I actually spoke to Kuda Feedes at the grand final Eve event because his son plays with the Rocker kids, and he said they've got potential. So get excited for the Rocker kids. He doesn't want to play AFL, Stav, unfortunately. Such a shame. He's so good. Young and needs to develop his game. Yeah. Yeah. 4th rounder. What else? Luke Quaynor, not even up to VFL standard. Needs to develop a lot. Like from what I saw, he struggled to get even 1 touch in the VFL. It's not a good sign. So that's that. I've got some files. So can you guys hear me? Stu, testing 1, 2. Do you find it strange that Melbourne forced to keep Petrarch and Oliver knows two players want to leave, and will it play a role in how well they play? I don't know. I can't speculate outside of what we talk about when it comes to Collingwood. I just don't have enough time to invest in those conversations as well, I'll be honest. Let's have a look at Tom Morris and Gary Lyon talking about this Dan Houston thingamajig.
Well, this is the big trade story at the moment, Dan Houston. How does he get to Collingwood? How does he get to Carlton?
So Collingwood are in front now. I've been off the radar, so I haven't really paid
Collingwood
much
are in
attention.
front because they have a player that the Gold Coast Suns like and wants to go to the Gold Coast Suns, and John Noble.
So philosophically, there is a difference. Like I thought Carlton were going to be in front, and then they would appear to say, no, we value the draft more than we value Dan Houston.
Well,
is that fair or not?
By and large, yes, but I think the bigger thing is that whoever gets pick 13 from the Gold Coast Suns will then be able to use pick 13 and give it to the Port Adelaide Football Club, and with other selections.
And the Magpies are going to get it.
Well, it looks like they're going to get it because they're going to give.
Surely not just for John Noble.
No. So what it looks like, we don't know this.
So I just want to touch on that, guys, just for a second, right? So Gary Lyon says surely Gold Coast are going to give first round pick just for John Noble, but what was funny was 3-4 weeks ago, we're all talking about, Collingwood might actually get pick 13 for Noble alone. So it just goes to show, like, and a lot of people were saying that. Everyone here could probably admit that we all thought for a second we were going to get Gold Coast pick 13 just for John Noble. And we were all wrong about that because now we have to give up a future first as well. And we're only really getting pick 23 for John Noble. So that was just interesting to note.
For sure. But the discussion has been that the Pies will get pick 13 and 23 from the Gold Coast Suns, and they'll give up John Noble and a future first rounder. Now, this suits the Gold Coast Suns because they want future picks, not picks in this year's draft, because they've got a good academy next year.
Yeah.
Okay. So once they have pick 13 and 23, they are hoping that will be enough, along with Joe Richards, who's also requested a trade to Port Adelaide, to bring in Dan Houston from Port.
So 13, 23 and Joe Richards.
For Dan Houston.
And Carlton are saying,
we'll give you a future first and a future second for pick 13 to the Gold Coast Suns.
They'll get 13. And what else they got?
Well, that's at the moment.
That's all they're offering for Dan Houston, 13.
No. What they're saying is we'll give you... They're saying first to the Suns.
No, if they were able to get 13,
yeah,
then what else are they giving up for Dan Houston?
No, we don't know yet.
Right.
Yeah.
So Collingwood are in front.
Collingwood are in front, yes. So
Okay.
that 13 and 23 is important, but does that satisfy Port? Maybe with Joe Richards it does.
Let's have a listen to Chris Davies, who spoke about Joe Richards.
Well, I guess. I mean, most deals now are linked in some way, so I think there's obviously that potential. But Joe suggesting that he wants the club come to us is a good thing. We think he can add to that forward group that we were piecing together towards the end of the year.
So they've wanted a small forward, and they've identified Joe Richards. They've offered him a 3-year deal. He's out of contract, which is interesting because the other night at Collingwood's Best and Fairest, where I was at, Craig McRae said he looks forward to Joe Richards.
So I put it on him a bit. I
Pies.
quite like that. But
yeah.
So Fly really last-ditch effort at the BNF to kind of keep Joe Richards at the club, but it wasn't enough. So it is a lot. So we got one of our beloved Laughing Magpies who says, I'll try to simplify this because this is messy. So he's basically saying he's hoping that we can bundle pick 13 and Joe Richards to Port Adelaide for Dan Houston. And then the more commonly accepted trade offer at the moment is we bundle 13, 23 and Joe Richards for Dan Houston. So, but the question is, if we give 13, 23 and Joe Richards, do we get Dan Houston and something else? That's another question that we won't know. We won't know the intricacies of these deals. We really don't know the intricacies. So if we're potentially giving away pick 23 as well for Houston, what would then be our earliest draft pick? It would be 36. It'd be 36.
Quite like the fact that Joe Richards said, yeah, I understand that, but I want to go.
I want to go. And he got an award. He got their best young player. I can't remember the exact name of the award. So that's a loss for the Pies if he does get to Port. But the main thing for them is to get Dan Houston in. That's exactly what they want to do. But to do so, they're essentially having to give up that future first rounder and picks this year.
This is the point, though, yeah? Like, on the surface, it looks like Carlton are saying, no, we are going to the draft. Yep. Collingwood are saying, no, we want the ready-mades, which Craig McRae has said previously.
Yeah, Craig McRae prefers players than draft.
Yeah, so maybe a future third comes back if we send Richards along with 13 and 23. And I'll just have a look at Port. What do Port have? Port don't have a lot. That's the problem. Maybe we get pick 39 back. Pick 39 in this year's draft is a late second rounder, very late second rounder, which will probably get pushed into the third round. So maybe we can swindle Port Adelaide so the deal looks like this. 13, 23, Joe Richards for Dan Houston and pick 39, which ends up sliding into a third rounder, which we could maybe do a pick swap so that we can build on stockpiling points for McGuan next year. Maybe, right? I don't know if he would get paid enough. This is where it's sort of what's the word? What's this? It's sort of fucking, I don't know what the term is, but it just passes my mind. It goes over my head. it goes over my head when it comes to compensation for the second and for players like Joe Richards. Yeah, Joshua makes a good point. Houston this year and Maguire next year will be better than drafting a player that might not work out. And this is where we can get really savvy with our trades, trading first round pick for 27 and 26 when the 2-year window comes out, which is beginning next trade window in 2025. That's fine. We can live without him for 4 games. Let's finish this video.
Right. So we're going to judge this at the end of the year, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, both teams are, if you were talking about both teams, where they are in terms of their capacity to win next year's premiership, maybe heads bobbing. Maybe Carlton fractionally in front because of Collingwood.
Okay. I know this is a Collingwood channel, but Gary Lyon suggests that Carlton are ahead in the premiership window. I want to make a poll. I want to see if who is more likely to win the flag next year. I'm just intrigued. I mean, this is going to be so biased, but anyways, Pies, Blues. Yeah, sorry, we won't get compo for Richards because he's in contract. That's an important point to make. We will not get compensation. Gary Lyon thinks he sort of ums and ahs and suggests that Carlton probably are more in the premiership window. I mean, we won 4 of our last 5 games. We beat Brisbane twice. We should have beaten Sydney. Carlton capitulated in that second half of the year. They got pumped by the team we beat a few weeks before that. I think Collingwood are ahead in the premiership window. And that's why I'm happy with how aggressive we are being this offseason with picks and trades and everything, because our form in the back half of the year warrants that we're going to be competitive again. And if you can win now, then trade as if it's a win now situation. Win flags is what you want to win. So if you can potentially win a flag, do what you need to do it. And the records, the performances from 2024, the back half after those 4 tough losses suggest that we're going to be right back in there next year. And if you've got Nick Dacos and Scott Pendlebury in your team and Jordan De Goey, you'd want to hope we're in the premiership window. And we need to do everything we can to keep these players happy and competitive in a competitive realm. All right, now we'll finish the video.
Needle movers are all 30 plus, so that's the only reason, but both are thereabouts. At the end of next year, we'll go, okay, the Collingwood have taken a big risk by saying, no, we want ready-mades, and therefore they've got and won the premiership. Well done. Well, Carlton are going to say, no, we'll go to the draft because we still think we've got players that can get us there anyway, and we value this draft. I think it's a really interesting comparison to be had, and we won't know the answer until next year.
And philosophically, the critics of Dan Houston, and there's not many, but those who say that he's not worth this sort of draft haul would suggest that he's just, and I use that in inverted commas, a halfback flanker. But those pushing for him would say, no, he's a 2-time All-Australian the last 2 years. He's arguably the best halfback flanker in the competition. And
they're pretty hard. They're not hard to find, are they?
Well, but he's still a 2-time.
I've come back around to the halfback flank conversation, and I've talked about the importance of it all year long. We saw what it did for Collingwood when Josh Dacos went to the halfback line, and when it works well, it looks good. Look at Sydney, Nick Blakey. Look at Brisbane Lions, Dane Zorko, and before Dane Zorko, Kitty Coleman tore us up in the grand final. Probably would have been a Norm Smith medalist if it wasn't for Bobby Hill, and if it wasn't for Collingwood winning the flag, right? Who else have you got? Who else was in the grand final? So Brisbane, Sydney. Who was in the prelims? We had Port Adelaide. They missed Dan Houston. If Dan Houston's there, they're more of a chance. They would have been more of a chance. Let's put it that way. Geelong, Max Holmes at times did really well off the halfback flank. Like it's an integral position. Yes, you can make shift players out of it, but you got to have the depth to be able to do so. So, for example, Dane Zorko doesn't need to be in the midfield or the forward line anymore because they've got depth there. They've got Cam Rayner, they've got Kai Lohman, they've got Logan Morris, they've got Archie, they've got Neil, they've got Mick Luggage, so they can afford that, right? Josh Dacos moves from the wing, which is an all-Australian position for him, to the half-back line. It's like, okay, we're almost robbing Peter to pay Paul, in a sense, right? So if you can find the best half-back flanker in the league, that's not easy to come about. And he is a weapon. He will rip up the field with his pinpoint accuracy, his vision, his blistering kick. I think Gary Lyon underrates. He's severely underestimating and underrating this move for Collingwood. And I'm just coming around to it now, okay?
All Australian
I appreciate
the last
that.
2 years. So where do you sit on the importance of a halfback flanker if you're Collingwood?
Yeah.
They would love him in their team. You know, whereas Carlton's saying, yeah, we would love him, but we're not going to give up our first pick this year to get him. They want to take that first pick to the draft, which is at the moment I think is pick 12.
Yeah.
And that's where the Blues sit. You know, and it's an interesting conversation. And what that does allow then is for Jack Lukosius to get from Gold Coast to Port Adelaide, because Port Adelaide would only trade out their future first pick for Lukosius if they can get a pick in this year's first round, which would be 13 and 23. So my question without notice.
Okay, so there you go. Let's just catch up on some comments here. There's a bit happening. Pies for sure over Carlton, so laughable. Blues mentally cooked. Pundits like Lyon take the piss about us. They get reactions and clicks. We've just beaten the Blues twice and Premiership twice. We're doing all right, aren't we? We're doing all right. We're actually not doing too bad. Yeah, don't worry. The boys have been training. The boys have been training. I've seen it. Pendlebury to the half-back line. I can see that happening. Yeah, they're good. They're good. This is a good question. And I'll extend the conversation out to the chat, okay? Give me one moment. Because this is a really, really good conversation that we can open a can of worms on. What's the question, Mick? Are flankers more important than key position players in the modern game? All right, while we let the poll cook there, get involved, guys. I'm going to say yes. Okay, where do I start? Look what we did in the final series, in the grand final, without Brody Mychek. He's really in. If he was in a squad with other key position forwards, he's probably a third key tall forward, maybe a second, right? We didn't have McStay in the grand final. Mason Cox swings forward at times. So does Darcy Cameron. Norm Smith medalist was Bobby Hill. Norm Smith medalist this year could have been Kai Lohman, right? Norm Smith medalist a few years ago could have been Tyson Stengel. All small forwards, flankers. And I think it has to do with just the way that the ball is moved in motion. And if you are quick and you can get behind your opposition's defensive line while the ball is being moved quickly, there's a lot more open access for these smaller forwards who also have an ability to take up mark overhead these days. Jamie Elliott, Bobby Hill can do it sometimes as well. Lockie Schultz is trying his best to add that to his game. He's done it in the past. And then your halfback flankers. I mean, look, it's hard to go past needing a key position defender. I think that's vital, critical, right? But it's not as important in the forward line. We've seen that. We've made it work. So it's a great question. What do people cook it up in the poll? There's a bit of a divide. It's a 50-50. It's a 50-50 as I would have thought. That's fair enough. All right. What else? What are we saying in the chat? Houston is a halfback, but also had midfield time for Port Adelaide. It's a versatility, guys. Once again, we talk about the importance to be a versatile player in the Collingwood Craig McRae system, and Houston has that. If we get Houston, what do we do with Pendles? Well, Houston. The thing is, the Pendles, he can be deployed as a high half forward. He can be maybe less so, but definitely more so as a halfback flanker. And hey, you don't need to be married to the fact that these veteran players who have signed 1-year contracts, they don't need to play 22 games for the year, right? The reality is, side bottom will miss games if we get players like Houston and Perryman to the club. Pendlebury will be in some strife. That's okay. That's okay. This is part of the retirement process, right? It'd be great if they can find themselves within the 22, the starting 22 every game next year. But we don't need to be married to the idea of that. And I think bringing in Houston and Perryman, it's healthy for them. Yeah, it's healthy for us to see different faces in lieu of Pendlebury, side bottom, Jeremy Howe, Hoskin Elliott, Mason Cox, right? Quaynor, how are you, brother? I hope you're well, man. I hope you're well. Pendles now has the gold sack wingman role. I don't think that's one position I don't think Pendles can play. He's far too slow to be running up and down the wing. No chance. No chance. And, yeah. Checkers for fullback if Johnson or Hayes comes good. See, the thing is, Checkers was like an All-Australian in the VFL as a centre half back. I've considered that option before, but we'd have to get a proper replacement in the forward line before that's even considered. Houston would not be swingman. Sorry, yes, sorry, Andreas. Yeah, he can play anywhere, just not wing. Sorry, mate. Fuck. Hold on. Oh, God. 53% no, by the way. Flankers are not more important than key position players in the modern game. Hawks' spike this year was predominantly because of their use out of the back line and scoring heavily. Yeah, who they have? Scrimshaw, Jarman Impey, Sicily. When you have exponents like that in your back line, I mean, wow, what that does for your team. Let's have a look statistically. In Hawthorn's last 5 matches, they were the highest rated team. But just scoring sources wise, let's have a look. Score sources, defensive half. So in the last 5 games, Hawthorn were the number 1 defensive half scoring team. 45 points for defensive half, along with Geelong, along with Adelaide, along with St Kilda. Brisbane and Sydney both top 8 sides for it as well. So you need to be in that conversation. You do. You really do need to be in that ball movement conversation from defensive half, at least a top 8 side, to really be in contention. What about for the entirety of the year? I mean, they started slow, so it's going to be a little bit skewed. You'd ideally just like to look at the last 5 games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that Hawthorn, after their shocking start, right? They were horrible for the most part of the first half of the season. They finished 9th in ball movement from defensive half. But like I said, it's those last 5 matches that show where they've been able to fast track their improvements. Good point, Sash. Yeah, you look, mate, they're fast, Mick. They're fast. Nick Watson and the likes, they're bloody fast. And they're beautiful ball movers. Do we still think losing 2 players and a first-round pick for Houston is worth it? I certainly think it sounds like another dud deal for us. Sorry, guys, my chest is cooked. So, Simon, I'm hoping if we give 13, 23 and Richards, I'm hoping we get back Houston and a 3rd rounder, right? I would accept that. He's the best halfback flanker in the game. He's going to help us, bottom line. When are you going to do Collingwood Cahoots? I'll look to do one either this week or next Tuesday. I'll let you guys know. Maybe I add it into this trade segment and we can do a Cahoot as well. It's tough, like full-time work. And then I've got to do a quiz, which takes me about an hour to make as well. I'm trying my best. Bear with me. I'm drinking from a keg. I don't think so, Murph. I think we just open up spots. Jake Stringer, we've announced that we're not going to go for him. Fly said we're out of the conversation. Exactly, Brendan. Elite kicking out of defense is a huge advantage. Houston would not be our Nathan Murphy. If we're going for Hayes, how does that rule out? No, it doesn't rule out Tomlinson. Tomlinson's an unrestricted free agent. So we could get Hayes and Tomlinson. Yeah. Hayes will give up a late third rounder or something like that, or maybe even a player swap. A Kruger or McInnes. I don't know how that looks, but we'll get Hayes for unders, and Tomlinson will be unrestricted free agent. So that's fine. Yeah. So if you see, guys, if you see the analysis videos I did for Perryman, you understand why we wanted him in the black and white. Steve, pick 85 for Hayes, but we don't have that. We don't have that. I'm looking at clubs picks. It says we have 36, 52, and 55. So we'd have to get that pick from somewhere else. What? No? Is that not right? But yeah, if you look at my analysis of Perryman, his ball use is exquisite, and he looks for the corridor. Doesn't matter if it's late in the game. He's looking to take that kick that progresses our movement, right? And you'll see, we've seen already that if you slow down with a lead, you're probably going to eat shit, right? So the new emphasis next year, Pendlebury has suggested it and alluded to it in some of his interviews. When you're up by four goals at 3/4 time, you're going to try and pile on another 5 or 6. Keep being aggressive. Fight fire with fire. We did originally now, but they only list the ones with points. Okay. We did originally, but now they only list the ones with points. Okay, so we do have it, but because it doesn't have any draft value index, they don't show it. Hayes and a fourth rounder for pick 55. Saints probably want him gone. Decent idea. Better than my ideas. I don't mind it. Nicholas Catavangelis, how are you? Do you reckon Fly's mentality to take mature players over picks is sustainable enough? Perryman's not necessarily that old, 25 going 26, so you could argue he's got 5 or 6 years of good footy in him. Dan Houston would have another 5 years of good footy as well. What else? I mean, there's not a lot in the trade period where youngsters are available anyway. So we'd have to go to the draft, which is hit and miss. At the end of the day, Nick, I think we're in a really good position to have a crack at the Premiership in the next year or two. And our last 5 games definitely point to that. So if that's the case, I say to Fly, do what you need to do. And if it's a win now mentality, then so be it. Like, who cares if we're at the bottom of the ladder in 2 years' time if we win another flag? Yeah. Let's make the most of what we've got with Nick Dacos now. Simon, show footage of Perriman's left foot. I don't think it's elite, and you need it to be a mid. I would argue that in the modern game, Simon, the opposite foot is not that important because players can kick check side now. And Perriman, if you watch enough footage of him on his left, he's much more competent than a lot of players in the AFL with his left foot. He really is. But we'll see that next year. But yeah, check side kicks sort of negate the fact that you need an opposite foot as much as you may have had in the past. Mick, really hope Reef stays. I see him coming good. I hope so too, man. I hope so too, but I just don't know. I don't know. Pick 55 and he's played 8 games in 3 years and Hines shines with late picks. So, nope. Fuck off, idiot. You didn't use your left foot once. You didn't know. So Chris, you're missing the point. So you're saying Hawks. Yes, Hawks have a bunch of left footers, but Simon was saying Harry Perriman's opposite foot, which is his left foot, isn't good, and you need it as a midfielder. I was making the point that you don't really need an opposite foot. You can just check side kick it these days anyways. And by the way, champ, when we played footy, you never used your opposite foot, and you went all right, yeah? You went all right without your opposite foot. Nick Dacos is a good example. He loves players, even not even check side. They do this kick called a slider kick. So it's like an outside of the foot kick, and it gives them a different trajectory, a different path of where it goes, right? And then you got the check side. So there's ways to use your preferred foot that give you angles if you were to use your opposite foot. Simon, mate, you're living in the past, brother. You're living in the past. There's many ways to skin a cat. There's many roads that lead to Rome, and you don't have to use your left foot. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. So I see us adding Houston, Perryman, Hayes, and Tomlinson this free agent trade period. I think that's a decent return in a market that isn't amazing. It's going to give us the best opportunity to have a crack next year, right? That's what it looks like. What else do we have? Is North Melbourne out of the... No, North Melbourne are still in the conversation, but nobody wants to go to North Melbourne, but they're in the conversation. They're in this conversation up to their eyeballs. I don't think we're getting compo for them, Stu. I think we just had injury replacement spots or something. Manny, here he is. I can't understand all this talk about draft picks. Every other club have been drafting for decades with no flags. I mean, it's a great point, right? Port, Gold Coast, Crows, Carlton. Guys, I'm sure many of you agree now, but the national draft is not the only way. Yeah? Mid-season draft, rookie draft, pre-season supplementary period, trades. We've done it all. Be diverse. Don't be dependent on the national draft. Yeah, Simon, I'd like Ollie Lord would be a nice cherry on the cake because he is in a nice age bracket. Maybe we'll get there. We'll get to that conversation once we secure what we're trying to achieve with Gold Coast. Mick, will Harrison be back before mid-season? He could, but I would definitely err on the side of caution with Harvey Harrison. When you're younger, your ligaments in your ACL do take a little bit longer to, I guess, bind back together and strengthen. So rather than Mick stay where he's a bit older, time is not on your side, you want to risk it. But with Harvey Harrison, with 10 years ahead of him, give him an extra couple months if needed. So I think closer to the third, if we want to play it safe, we'll see Harvey Harrison 3/4 of the way through the season. But if Collingwood back in their S&C, then he'll be back. He'll definitely be back halfway through the year. Yeah. Seems draft is overrated these days. How many games do we reckon Ed Allen gets next year? I reckon 10 games. I reckon 10 will be the under-over market for Ed Allen. How much will he play in the midfield is another question, but I think we'll find ways to have him play in the forward line, play on the wing, and play in the midfield. So there you go. Let's have a look at Mr. Pommy's video. Anyone else missing footy already? Can't wait to do a best 23 after the silly season is here. Be keen to see what our 23 looks like after all this madness is done. Let's have a look at Pommy's video regarding Dan Houston, because we rate his opinion, guys, and let's break it down step by step with him. Pommy, the great man. I will share the link here as well, guys, if you want to go give him go subscribe to him. Share screen.
Your kitchen. If you're still using plastic or wood cutting boards, ditch them right now. These are loaded with endocrine disruptors, and every time
season, the afterpay trade period. Now, for those who were probably in the middle class or a bit posh, you might not be familiar with afterpay, but afterpay is kind of like hire purchase in a way. It's where you stagger your payments over a period of time, fortnightly. So you kind of get it now, you pay later. Do you remember that? You buy now, you pay later. All them ads. Growing up on a council estate, I think our entire house was filled with buy now, pay later, and then them pink letters through the post when Ma and Pa didn't pay the bill. But we're going to try and explain what I mean by that. So what we've got to do is we've got to go through the rule changes of next year and just show you how teams may be aggressive. And we're seeing...
So just to preface this, guys, so Pom's about to explain some of the trade rule changes next year, particularly when it comes to the access to future first-round picks, okay? So important to get our head around this.
Carlton and Collingwood being very aggressive. Carlton being very aggressive in the terms of that they're sticking to the draft this year. Collingwood being very aggressive that they're going to go and get ready-made talent. So let's have a look at why that may be and the ramifications of clubs. So this is the first slide you'll see, right? And you'll see the green numbers are their points value today and the yellow numbers are the points value next year. So what the AFL did is they changed two big things. But one of the big things was the value of points.
Okay, so I think on the first slide, Pommy made an error. So he said there are changes in points value. So for example, if you look at pick number 2, it says 2,517 points in 2024 is what pick 2 is worth. And then it says in 2025, actually, I might need to move this, guys. Hey, I might need to move this 1 second. Sorry. Put that there for a moment. I'll put my head there. Okay. So 2,517, you see that twice, but the change is 36. I don't think he added the change to 2025. So 2,517, right? In 2025, pick 2 in 2025 is worth 2,481 points.
Appreciated that to make it harder for teams to kind of basically manipulate the draft by taking a first rounder for 8/3, right? Another big change is the match bid. Currently, right, it's going to be down. It's been reduced to 10%. So currently it's 20%. So what that means in real money is currently to match a bid for 3,000, you only pay 2,400. That changes to 10% of 3,000, right? So that's quite easy to work out, but that's 2,700 now. So it actually works out a little bit more valuable.
So for context there, with McGuan being the father-son, Nick Dacos, we got a 20% discount. For McGuan, it'll only be 10%. So we're going to have to stockpile more picks relative to what we did for Dacos because of that discount alone. 20% down to 10% now. Okay.
But then they've stopped any points being allocated from peak 4. Currently it's 73. So you can see that the change doesn't massively, the blue number is the change in points value. You can see it doesn't really massively affect the early part, but then it starts to kick in, right? And then if we go to the second round, the traditional second round, you can see that number's...
So on this second slide, Pommy has made the necessary adjustments. So what's happening as we get deeper into the rounds of the draft next year, the value of these picks are getting lower and lower, making it harder to match a first round bid for a McGuan. So we saw on the first page, the points adjustment was minimal, right? Very, very small, but they're getting larger in the latter rounds to make it more difficult for teams to stockpile picks to match bids in the first round for a McGuan.
Really fluctuate around that 200 mark. Now, this is really key because these are the most commonly traded picks, right? When you've got these bid matches, anything from like 13 to like 25, people are just throwing away, then they're bringing them into match bids. But you can see here that where commonly, let's just say a bid of, let's say pick 2. Currently, if someone bids on pick 2, you only owe 2014. You can see here that how that bid match works with the price value, where before 2000, so let's just say we've got that bid for, and say the bid comes in pick 3, that's 2,234 currently, we now owe 2,178. Before, you could maybe match that with 22, 23, and 36. You can see now you're going to have to match that with more bids. So what it's doing is really adding value to this match bid and making it a little bit harder. And you can see it really affects the next slide, right? So 54, as you can see here, 220 is pick 54. So in years gone by, 54 this year could roughly match a bid, pick 39 with your discount. Now, next year, 14, it's not matching you any bid. There's almost zero worth. It's only got 14.
Look at it. So that the value in that third round is significantly dropped. So, like I said, as long as AFL are clear about what changes are going to be made, we'll be fine in acquiring McGuan. But it's important that we understand this.
Points allocation. So you can see here now, when you are future trading, if you're going to bid match, you're looking for second rounders a lot more as opposed to being able to drop round the third, because these are third round picks. So let's just say I had a bid match and I got 37.
And he'll talk about future firsts. I imagine we might even, so if we're using our future first this year to get access to Dan Houston, then I think we'll go into next year's draft and swap our future pick from 2026 to get a availability in the second round to be able to match the bid for McGuan.
And 38, right? That's 483 and 483 and 465. So that is 948 points. Now, with the draft allocation system, that's pick 14, right? That's pick 14 of points worth. Next year, right, that's only allowing me to match a bid this year of pick 25. So it's a big change. You can see there, it's like a 12 pick switch. So you can see why teams are going to be aggressive, but the AFL have offset that. So let's go to this slide here. And this is your draft arsenal. So currently in the AFL, you get this year's picks and next year's picks, right? So you get, this is why I'm calling it the afterpay draft. So that's about roughly, if you average 1 to 18, 19 to 36, that's what we tried to do. So this is based on really finishing mid-table. You're getting 4,731 points to play with. And you can see here that the 4th and the 5th have a little bit of value this year. And then I've got my future picks, which you can see there, I've got something to play with. Now, remember the rules of the AFL. If you trade the future first, you've got to have a future second, all that malarkey. You can't just go crazy. You've still got quite a lot of points to play with, as you can see. But you can see from next year, they're opening up an extra years of picks. So this is why I'm calling it the afterpay draft. Because...
So not only as of next year, we can use our first rounder from 2026 and 2027. We can also use our future second rounders in 2026 and 2027, which is what makes it so easy to acquire McGuan next year. Probably means if we go down that route, especially if we give up our future first next year for Noble to get Houston, we probably won't be getting a big fish, I would imagine, with picks next year if we're giving up our future first in this window and then also potentially giving away our future first for next year for more second round picks. But in saying that, like I said, because of the new rule changes, we can access our future second rounders from 26 and 27, use that for the McGuan bid, and then keep that first rounder. So there's many ways to go about this. I might just leave it at that, though, to be honest, guys. I think Pommy he's covered some important parts there. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. We'll do this again tomorrow. I said 5 o'clock yesterday. I'll do 4:30. I think 4:30 suits me better. I finish work right away and can just get straight into it. So if you enjoyed, guys, please consider subscribing if you haven't. If you want to become a member on the channel, support the channel by any means, feel free to do so. I'll leave there's an emailing list as well that I have available for you guys to jump on if you want to be a part of that. That's there in the link. And then if you like to become a member and support Pies Footy, help cover the costs of the channel, then there's a link there. But your presence is also appreciated. And if you want to, hold on, I've cooked it here, haven't I? I've cooked it, but yeah, that's fine. We'll see you guys tomorrow for another trade period wrap up for the day, going into day 3. And hopefully we have some more news. Go Pies.